Hi, everybody. This is 1,474 days since Richard was premeditatedly murdered. A whistleblower reporting criminal trafficking in the borderland. He was murdered on Fort Bliss, the Fort Bliss footprint, and we still don't have his remains. This needs to be repeated until we get his remains, because Richard's murder took place there on a military installation, okay? Not out at sea in a storm, not up in the air where, he fell over vast parts of the land or in water or whatever, where it's very difficult to get the remains back to the family. My Oma, her husband, my grandfather, was shot. We have his paperwork. He was shot in Russia during World War II, and he was buried in a mass grave. Okay, it was really bad weather. It was really, really cold. He was buried in a mass grave. My Oma received a letter. Some family members were not that fortunate. He was born in. He was murdered and killed in action in on enemy territory, and he was buried in a mass grave. We know exactly where he was buried. Richard's murder took place on his own military installation. This is so important. There are so many criminals involved in this. They are just so criminal. And you might like them. You might like them. You might be married to some of them. You might be married. You might like them. You might have worked with them. But it doesn't change the fact that there are so many criminals involved in this. To look the other way, to stay silent when you know. And see, this is what Richard knew. You cannot allow criminal activity to run amok when these are people that are entrusted with the treasures, their wealth, their time, their prayers, their talents, everything, respect. These people are entrusted with the oath and the duty that goes along with being a civil servant, with going along with serving their country. And absolutely, they're entrusted with all the weapons, with the ammunition, with all the gear, the uniforms, the patches, the bulletproof vests, the backpacks. There's so much gear, right? There's so much gear. I know. I helped my husband pack that, clean that, um, you know, because Rob was in the Army for over 30 years. I, I haven't even numbered how many times he was deployed. when you are a medic, when you are a physician assistant, you are deployed a lot, a lot, that you lose count. I remember during these 4 years when Jay Paulin attacked my absolutely honorable husband who has an impeccable record, and he is a decorated retired lieutenant colonel that started off as an E3. And he said that Rob was not a real soldier. That's what he said. I, you know, that is the. I put up all these TikTok. Matter of fact, I'm going to repost them about the service of my husband Richard's father to this country. And all the deployments, risking his life. When you are in Iraq, when you are saving not just military, but also civilians, when you're trying to do your best to save them, and you're working with even their family members. And anyway, I don't have to really say much because Rob's unbelievable, beautiful record is enough. Demonstrates it's enough. And the amount of trolls, even government paid trolls. Yes, a lot. I think probably 99% of the trolls have been government paid trolls or politically paid trolls. Combed through Rob's file, went and talked to people that knew Rob, that served with Rob. They've tried to talk to numerous people that know us, and they combed through Rob's record, and I think they were blessed. These criminals were blessed. Because I think in their life, all they see is how people want to get over on the government, how people want to get over on a government for the people, by the people, and of the people. And how they want to destroy children and just always be political, always on these political policy paths, that being absolutely the focus. But they couldn't find anything because their intention wasn't to be blessed. Their intention was malicious. Their intention was to do harm. And so all they could really do would just harass us and threaten us with lies and very sexual, deviant, sex cult, vile and vulgar comments day in and day out to get us to be like, okay, I can't handle this anymore. We have to stop. No, those bullets are just propaganda. Those bullets are just a psyop. Those bullets are in order to create fear and discomfort. Richard was brutally murdered. Brutally murdered for doing his duty, seeing something, saying something, reporting it, collecting evidence to filing it. He was brutally murdered as a whistleblower on Fort Bliss, and we don't have his remains. Why? Do not tell me or our family that they don't have Richard's remains. They have Richard's remains. If my Oma knew where her husband's remains were in World War II, behind Russian, the Iron Curtain, then the United States government absolutely knows where their soldier, their whistleblowing soldier, where the IG were all over the barracks because of Halliday, that Washington, D.C. was in communication with him, that FBI Houston was in communication with him, that Child Protective Services were given a report and evidence and were in communication with him, that he called 911 multiple times, that CID was in communication with him, that they retaliated against, that they tried to smear, that they tried to discredit, and they couldn't do it. At the beginning of July, they stood there and they had nothing. They had nothing except for their criminality, their abuse of power, their harm that they did to a young son of this republic that wanted to serve his country, wanted to do his duty, see something, say something, report it, file it, collect the evidence, file it, report it. Yet, Lieutenant Colonel Michael Roddick retaliated against him for his conflicts of interest. And Major General Clem Coward retaliated against him for his conflicts of interest. Rather than protect the whistleblower, respect the whistleblower, and do their duty, they retaliated. But guess what? The retaliation fell apart at the beginning of July. And the election of Yvonne Rosales scared them to death, which happened in the beginning, 14th of July. So you got 9th of July and 14th of July. Very significant dates. What were they going to do? Apologize to Richard? Admit to their abuse of power crimes and the crimes, the motives, the crimes that created the motive, the conflicts of interest? And they weren't alone. There's so many criminals. You have the usurper now, it just snowballs, right? It snowballs because of the nepotism. So, people have told me, oh, this has been going on for decades. I'm like, yeah, I know, because of all the nepotism. It has snowballed and snowballed. And then people are like, why are we having so many crimes, right? Why are we having so many crimes? Because it has been allowed to snowball. It has been allowed, the nepotism has been allowed through the human resources. And if you want to, um, I can see comments now. When you want to understand how the nepotism could concentrate there on the border in El Paso, you just have to go to human resources and you see the nepotism there. You could go to human resources and see even civilian connections. And you can go to the same address that was registered to FitFam El Paso. That used to be, since we own FitFam El Paso now, LLC. That belongs to us now. Let's see. There. Okay, thank you, Anicia. I can see now. I was on the wrong thing. Okay. So, but that office of those that were running FitFam El Paso, and they have another connection. They have other connections to LLCs, and the LLCs just thank God that we have a transparent, or it should even be more so when it comes to our businesses and our government, because between all of the open records, which I really encourage all of you to make sure that you understand that you have the right to ask for open records. And it's not that difficult. Just start collecting the agencies, understanding in this day and age with the tools that we have, you can absolutely collect these agencies, look them up, and take time to do it. Because when you are looking up the different agencies and you understand what they do, and there's so many, y'all. There's so many. We shouldn't have any crime in this country, right? We shouldn't have any crime in this country. There's an agency and an institution for everything to be safe and beautiful and taken care of. And yet, we have to be our own investigators. We have to be our own media. We have to be our own advocacy towards accountability, towards getting our son's remains and holding those that did this brutal murder of Richard on Fort Bliss accountable. And all those that covered up and participated. There's so many criminals, y'all. I keep saying that to myself. The more, we uncover all of these names. And, yesterday I mentioned Patricia. There's, a couple of Patricias there. And they're key people. They're key people. And, this Bliss Avenue. And then you have these certain streets in El Paso, and this is where the criminals congregate. But the big criminals are elsewhere, are El Paso elsewhere. And they profit from El Paso. They profit from the criminal culture that they have developed there at the border. But they live elsewhere. And, they'll charge the El Pasoans all of this property tax, and, we need a bigger prison. We need another prison. We need a El Paso police, bigger building. We need more because we have so many criminals. And it's like, okay, but we have a DA that's a usurper. Wouldn't it be better to go and arrest him and put in a proper DA? Wouldn't that be better than building a new police department? Wouldn't that be faster? And then they have a illegal El Paso County has an illegal chief medical examiner who gets, uh, uh, almost $450,000 a year. Wouldn't it be cheaper for El Pasoans and better, more bang for their buck if they would get rid of the unqualified chief medical examiner that's botching all these cases? That's not doing his job in the cause and manner of death that's trustworthy because he's not legal and he's not trustworthy. Get rid of him and put in a proper chief medical examiner, who's a judge. That would stifle a lot of crime. Let me tell you. If people knew that there was a go-getter as a chief justice, a moral go-getter that would absolutely give us trustworthy cause and manner of death in these crimes and testify to them, because the chief medical examiner is a key witness in all of these capital murder cases and these major crimes. Um, it, that would really make a criminal think twice. But because he's illegal and because he is not qualified, and botches the cases, the criminals are like, oh, I don't have to be afraid. I can do what I want. We got a usurper, trespasser in the DA's office, and we got an illegal, unqualified in the chief medical examiner's office. And, Veronica Escobar's not going to do anything about it because she's the one that put him in there. She's a criminal. We have so many criminals, y'all, and she's one of them. And Mario Raskin Ortiz is one of them. And Bill Hicks is one of them. And his cohorts like John Briggs and Justin Underwood and Bob Moore of El Paso Matters are also criminals. And I see, someone sent me a commercial of Justin Underwood with the flag behind him and everything. All the pretense that he has America in his heart and his children in his heart. I don't know if he has his children in his heart or not. Whatever. But he sure does not have America in his heart. And so it's really quite the opposite of his commercial. Because what he did in our open records that we have absolute confirmation in the evidence is criminal. He's a criminal. And what Leilani Hart has done, and well, she's a confirmed convicted criminal, right? She's a confirmed convicted criminal. And what she has done, being used as a unreliable source, which, they've liked to use Christopher Ernest Grant as an unreliable source again for this orchestrated, murderous Walmart mass shooting case. There's so many criminals because they are absolutely compromised, absolutely, with these LLCs. If they can do it, I can do it. If they can do it, I can do it. If they can get away with it, I can get away with it. There's so much money involved. It's become the economy. The criminal network has become the economy for these criminals. It's called Let me think. Let me think. It just came to my mind. It is so risky. It is such a hole that people fall in. Um, and I just had it in my mind what you call it when you have leadership engaging in such terrible criminal conduct over and over again that it causes those under them to become criminals, and then those under them to become criminals, and their children to become criminals. And then we have just a whole criminal network. It's there's so many criminals in this. Look at Bradford Bugado, he's a criminal. Nadal Baim, he's a criminal. Absolutely a criminal. Look at Sean Bernabe, absolutely a criminal. And Donna Martin, 3 stars she has, and she's a total criminal. You see, they are really destroying the respect that we have for our military, the respect that we have for our country. And I have fought to not let that happen, to say, no, the system is bigger than these criminals. And I still believe it is. It's, it's kind of daunting when you look at the Washington D.C. leadership, and they, like, where is Biden? Where is Biden? Where is he? He's like, he's not even there. You've got all of these threats going on in Iran, which, um, I think that they're just itching to destroy magnificent architecture, because I'm of the belief that these wars are unnecessary except for to destroy people and architecture. I mean, why is Laos the most bombed country in the world? Why is that? What threat did Laos pose? I just, why they carpet bombed it over and over and over again, week in and week out. I'm like, really? What was there? What was there that they didn't want us to see? And, I came to this thought, and, I might be wrong. This is just my opinion, right? With these wars, because I just believe, not winning wars, which that's what we're in business. We're in business of not winning. And no way, with what happened to Richard, are they in the mode of developing a strong, healthy, victorious. It's like these Olympics. I like to watch the swimming. You can't be a Phelps or a Licky. What is it? Licky. Oh, I hope I'm saying his name right. I mean, wow, his stroke. When you that camera's underwater and you're watching him swim next to, in this case, what I'm remembering is a Frenchman, and they're in a sprint, and the American anchor, he takes one stroke to every 2 strokes of the Frenchman. And who wins? The American. He's behind even, but he is just so strong, and he's like a missile through that water. He doesn't have to move a lot, right? He's just riding the wave. Was really amazing. I really love watching swimming, of course, because I used to be a swimmer right there in El Paso with Colonel Johnson. CJ was my coach. Many people I've met in El Paso know CJ, Colonel Johnson, the greatest swim coach ever, in my opinion. He was amazing, amazing. And you don't get to be victorious without the discipline. CJ knew that. We were there day in and day out, and we did Nautilus, right? Nautilus training. We did mental training where he would lay us all down, and we were in a gym, and the lights would be toned down, and we would go through the strokes, go through the strokes, go through what our event would be, how we would swim that event, how we would step up to the block, how we would place our hands on the starting block, where our feet were, how we would be listening to the gun to go off. Every move, he would talk us through it to be disciplined so that we would be victorious mentally. And then we would do our Nautilus training, and then we'd get in the pool and we would do it. We would swim it. And all of that mental training would then transfer to the pool, to our strokes. He was a magnificent coach. And you see our leadership in the military. They know these things. But I think there's been nepotism even in our ranks, because our generals are 44 four-star generals that have betrayed their oaths. They are committing crimes because they're up to no good with foreign and domestic enemies. They have become tools of the enemies of this country, and for profit, for a sweet little space in an LLC. Used in many of these cases to legally rob the American people. There's so many criminals, y'all. And they've made an economy out of it. They've made a criminal network out of it. And it's very difficult then for good people. And what do I mean by good people? They want to hit the mark. There's two words in the Bible for sin: harmatia and antinomian. Harmatia is when you're trying real hard to hit the mark. You're trying hard to do the right thing. You're trying hard to be a good husband, a good wife, a good friend, a good mother, a good father, a good grandmother, a good grandfather, a good soldier, good at whatever job you're trying to do, honest, you're trying to be honest, trying not to be greedy, you're trying. We all come short, but we're trying. And then you have the antinomian, the absolute person that wants to purposely do the opposite of anything that's right and good. Those that absolutely brutally murdered Richard. And And then we believe that, of course, this was not a one-on-one attack. This was a code red. We believe it was a code red. Leilani Hart said it was a code red. And all the evidence shows that it was an act of desperate retaliation to silence Richard because nothing else worked. And of course, we believe that KTSM has answers, that El Paso Matters has answers, El Paso Community Foundation has answers, along with the DA's office, with the chief medical examiner's office, with the representative's office, and of course, along with the 15 plus agencies, even over in Mexico, and of course, the military absolutely knows. Because Richard was murdered on their footprint. They know. And they know that the evidence was tampered with. They know his car, his phone, his items like, his passport, all, and there's more. And they are taking key people. It's kind of like Ernest Christopher Grant, how they just kind of sanitized him. They're taking key people, and one of those is Patricia. And they've sanitized. But we, just like Jules Tuganon Chan tried to sanitize his presence, he wasn't fast enough. And they, you just, and then the truth comes up. Let's say, in Ireland, I've been through my whole lawn. We had like 2 acres. We went through that whole picking up stones, and we built stone walls, and we were picking up stones, because the stones just come up. And then you're like, oh, I got them all. And then the next day you get up, and then there they are. It's like my land grows stones, they come up again. And then you have to pick them. And then all of a sudden, a couple days later, you got a whole bunch more. They just come up. And this is how the truth is. They think, oh, we've sanitized it. But then the next day it's like, oh, but we forgot to do this. Oh, yeah, I forgot this. Oh, I forgot that. It's coming up. And, and the Bliss Avenue is one of them. And the Bliss Avenue even connects to lawyers, y'all. Not only to KTSM, but to lawyers in the Walmart case. Bliss Avenue and those houses, are a lot of truth stones. And then, of course, the LLCs like Fit Fam El Paso and Western Frontier Trading. Western Frontier Trading, with Nadal Baim and everything surrounding that. And all the addresses, there's so many addresses, and phone numbers and all of that. They just wink. They just say, hi, James Hart. Hi. They just wink. There's just, you just can't sanitize enough. And Jonathan Caleb Ambrose, the husband of Danae Katzen, and he's been married before. They tr- they were I think that the criminals, this criminal network that are absolutely culpable, just I don't know what their motive was for trying to betray their own or save their own by, I don't know, building this, or I should say framing this narrative around Danae Katzen and Jonathan Embrace that they were just um common con artists, right? That they were just common thieves. When we have the interview from the PI, and he's like fawning over Danae Katzen, fawning over her family, how wonderful they are, and how wonderful she is, and she's not like that stripper. And I'm like, what? I mean, is how much was he pay? We didn't pay. How much? I mean, we did pay him some money. Um, Hired him because of Hardy Hay. Hardy Hay, uh, another who I think is criminal. Houston. Houston is involved in this. This is El Paso elsewhere, right? El Paso elsewhere. El Paso, Hawaii, El Paso, Washington, D.C., El Paso, San Antonio, El Paso, Houston, El Paso, Austin, El Paso, uh, Ohio, El Paso, New York, El Paso. I mean, it gets pretty elaborate when you put up all the strings and everything like that to connect all the dots. It gets pretty elaborate. Um, but the PI absolutely fawned over Danae, and we were, very kind and saying, "Wait a minute, she just spent some time in jail. Why don't you ask her what about her criminal activity? She just got in trouble. Why don't you ask her about that?" And the interview is just so telling. And you're like, who is she the daughter of? Who is she connected to? I mean, KTSM just put out the red carpet for her. And she was very, very comfortable at KTSM. She knew those rooms. She knew how to do everything. She knew where to sit. She knew how to wait, what to wait for. She was absolutely comfortable at KTSM. And so Danae Katzen is not a common criminal, a common thief. And neither is West Pointer, her husband, Caleb Ambrose. And when you know that she's connected to Leilani Hart, and Leilani Hart is in the adult entertainment business, and her household is engaging in incest and child pornography and child sexual assault in her master bedroom without her thinking she needed to report it because she's so afraid of some kind of immigration problem going on with her. And then she has communications with her husband talking about their long history of incest and child abuse, sexual abuse. And the threats with weapons that were illegally purchased. And that he has a habit of purchasing multiple weapons illegally. There's so many criminals in this, y'all. There are so many criminals. And I spoke to him on the phone, James Hart, and, you know, he was so comfortable with Marlon. Marlon called him. It wasn't Agent Soto, it was Marlon. Marlon let me know. They're very comfortable with each other. And no CID head agent, of the office is going to call you up to tell you what's going on in your case when you've been accused of messing with young girls, right? And being an NCO, and then you're in the discussions with Command Sergeant Major Jakovitz, and he's saying, "Oh yeah, we're bringing young girls in onto the base." DES Thomas Kane is giving them passes. DES Thomas Kane gave them passes. That didn't come from Command Sergeant Major Jakovitz. Jakovitz told us they were bringing them in because the soldiers were, depressed. They were having morale problems and they needed to bring in those young girls. And it was during COVID when he was supposed to be telling his soldiers they were in danger, when he knew, because he told us, he knew it was a farce. He knew it was a farce. And no young soldier, healthy soldier, was at any risk. And we know that now. And they're still trying to give us false narratives, which leads me to the discussion about Google. Google lost their case. They said they're going to appeal it. But, this case is an antitrust case, which means, monopolies, and we have so many. Oh my gosh, we have so many monopolies, don't we? We have monopolies just in rental car we have these just a few rental car companies, and then when you look at who owns them, it's like, geez, the same people owns them. We have so many monopolies. And so this antitrust decision, um yeah, that's got kind of like a little bright light in all of this, what's going on, because we've been actively communicating with Google, because you cannot think that media stories that are false stories, that use unreliable sources, that misrepresent the truth over and over again, do not impact public perception, which impacts policy, which impacts our country. And it is so dangerous to let these false stories, like on the Walmart mass shooting, to hinder the truth, to stop the stories and the witnesses that said there's multiple shooters, to not go forward, but to allow Ernest Christopher Grant to be the media darling, where he is perpetuating so much crime in his misinformation. And absolutely, he lied. And it wasn't me that said he lied. It was the El Paso Police Department that said he lied. And then I looked at the evidence to make sure that the El Paso Police Department was telling the truth, and they were. They were calling him a liar. And yet, the media is still using him to perpetuate their absolutely false narrative on the Walmart mass shooting, which is so damaging because, they want it to be a way to divide us, to bring hatred into the picture instead of crime. What Patrick Crusius did was criminal. He got 1,000 years in prison. Right? 1,000 years in prison. He's supposed to serve 1,000 years in prison. Well, maybe it's 900 years, but whatever. 900 years, 1,000 years, it depends. How long can he live in prison? And he's supposed to go to Colorado. He's supposed to go to the Alcatraz of the Rockies. But no, he's in isolation across from the courthouse. So what he did was criminal. But he has a mental health condition. He has a severe mental health condition. I want to know if he is capable of writing a manifesto, because I don't think he is. And I know that he is not capable of orchestrating all of this. I think he's like a Crooks, right? Crooks, the failed attempted assassination. You know, and our response team, our security detail fails. Our security detail at Walmart failed. Walmart gave Cielo Vista Walmart hundreds of thousands of dollars to hire security, and they did not do it. There was not one, because and this is something that a lot of people don't know, because Google doesn't allow these stories to reach the top of the search, right? Their algorithms are all skewed. And that's why this case is, a good start. But Cielo Vista Walmart was given hundreds of thousands of dollars from corporate Walmart for security. And they didn't do it. Not one security guard in Walmart that day. Not one. Which is absolutely unacceptable. Because Walmart sells weapons and ammunition. And it was a very busy time. So there was a security detail breach, right? The lack of security, a security breach. There was a security breach with Richard's case. He was a whistleblower. He was under 24-hour security watch as a whistleblower. It wasn't for any other reason. We were told all kinds of stories at the beginning, and all of that information was disseminated, which gave the public a false picture of what was happening, a false perception. And now we've had to spend time over and over and over again to let people know that Richard was whistleblowing. And they knew it, and the IG were all over, and they were obligated by law to give him whistleblower protection. And his security detail, because they were complacent. And I remember looking at Marlon Soto's eyes, looking him straight in the eyes with that one. They were complacent. No, they didn't show up. There was a security breach. They absolutely, Lieutenant Colonel Roddick, Michael Roddick, absolutely security breach. Major General Clem Coward, security breach. SOP breach. They didn't follow the SOP. You don't have a situation like Vanessa Guillen and not have your leadership on alert when you have Vanessa Guillen's body parts, burnt body parts being found and causing a lot of people to lose their jobs. And then you have complacency in that same command. And Robert White, General Robert White, who I didn't mention very much, but we know who he is, and we know the connections now. We know the conflicts of interest. He's Fort Bliss elsewhere. Well, he's not too elsewhere. Absolutely has conflicts of interest. With El Paso. So there was a breach in security that allowed Richard to be forcibly removed from his barracks room and, really kidnapped, really forcibly taken, and brutally murdered. And absolutely, there was these tactical move storage units involved. Um, all that is coming together. And then, of course, with the failed assassination attempt, that was a breach in security, wasn't it? Absolutely breach in security. Same method. And you see, with Christopher Wray, he's such a criminal. He is such a criminal, and Harris is such a criminal, right? During all of this, uh, you just have one after the other. There are so many criminals. So, you're saying, oh my goodness, how are you going to get your son's body? How are you going to get accountability? How is this going to happen? There's so many criminals, right? And I've been told that over and over again. There's so many criminals, and this is, you could only have a few because people can't handle that there's so many. No, I think people can handle that there's so many criminals because they see them. And that's why they just feel helpless. Because how do you do it? How do you get accountability when there's so many criminals and so many criminals that need to be held accountable? And with the so many criminals, it is nowhere near the amount of victims, and it's nowhere near the amount of people for the a government of the people uh for the people and by the people, right? Even with so many criminals, the amount is nowhere near the people. And that's why they are always trying to do the psyop. They're always trying to put out that misinformation. They have to control the people because the people are looking at the moon and they're like, okay, that's not a rock. The people are looking at the failed assassination attempt and saying, wow, we have so many criminals that are supposed to be protecting, that are supposed to be, so in Richard's case, it is, how we try to explain it to people is that it is a rogue criminal group from the original response team. And even with so many, you look and you're like, oh my gosh, but, you know, they're nothing compared to the number of stars in heaven. And the stars fought against Sisera. Sisera's pretty powerful because it's this dictatorship, like don't cross Sisera, right? It's kind of like, what is Esther, the story of Esther. It's like, how can this king has so much power. He has so many people, he can snap his finger and just, kill who he wants and get away with it. He has the power of that. And Esther is just trying to do the right thing, right, with courage. And then I have Theodora behind me. I don't know if you see her. There she is. There she is. With Justinian. Let's not forget Justinian. And, whoops. And, you know, her story, which I used to talk about a lot, um, it's a story that a true story, because we have the laws to prove it. We have the Justinian Code to prove it. We have the application of the Justinian Codex in our law system to prove it. And she was so, and still is today, so smeared because what did she focus on? She focused on family law, inheritance, inheritance, and who was legitimate. And so, of course, to protect the family, to protect a legitimate family member and their inheritance against somebody sly coming in trying to slither their way into a family and steal the inheritance. She was really set against that. And if you don't know the story of Theodora, um, I think I've posted it because it's not that easy to find the story, but it is well worth it. Maybe I'll post it. Maybe I'll post my links again because it's something to remember when things look so overwhelming. Things look like a Goliath, and you're like, how in the world? And I know that everyone has their own Goliaths in their family and their day-to-day lives that they, you know, you just calmly have to, um, the frustration of no justice and, um, the attack on our children and our children's minds and their futures and our grandchildren. And, I know that, I hear it all the time, the frustration of that. How are we going to get Richard's rank back? How are we going to get his remains back? How are we going to have a beautiful funeral for him? A hero's funeral, not some half hearted because, I want to tick a box and get it over with memorial and force soldiers to come. No, no. Richard needs a proper funeral, and those that hurt him need to be held accountable. And those that hurt Richard, this is not their only crime. They are thieves. They are perpetual criminals. They are antinomian sinners. Remember at the beginning I said there's harmatia and there's antinomian. These are people that want to, their whole life they want to commit crime. These people that brutally murdered Richard and participated in it. And they hurt children. And they'll profit at anything. They have no boundaries, no morals, no discipline. And their sexual cult language, vile and vulgar language, is absolutely indication. When you go through it for months and months and months, you absolutely know that they have no boundaries. Because they project, right? They'll project. So, I just think that can't win. That can't win. It's not disciplined. It's not trained. It's just thievery. And if you really want a sweet victory, you have to work hard and you have to be disciplined and you have to be trained and they want victory on their terms. And it won't happen. It's kind of like wanting heaven on their terms. It's just not going to happen. And so I stand on that faith, and we're going to continue. And who knows how God is going to bring down the Goliath? Who knows? Because to God, Goliath is like a little ant, right? He just laughs. He just chuckles. And You know, the Goliath is just like a little ant. And so I can say, oh my gosh, there's so many criminals. And God laughs, just laughs right in their face. And he just says, don't you dare say it. Don't you dare say it. This is my conversation with God. And I'm like, nope, I'm not going to say it. I have total faith. You are absolutely victorious. And I'm okay because the real problem is when we don't have faith. Because the bigness of this is very little to Christ and his kingdom. It's as nothing. It's as dust. So, you're right. When you write me and you say, "Oh my gosh, I can't wrap my head around this. There are so many criminals." And I'm like, "Yep, there are so many criminals, but they are as dust to God." And the Donna Martins and the Sean Bernabes and the McConvilles and the Veronica Escobars and the Mealys and the Austins and even Governor Abbott and the Bill Hicks and the Mario Raskin Ortiz. God just laughs. And their time is coming. And I understand pain, but God has a big purpose for this. And um, Richard absolutely is a hero, and God knows it. So, and we're allowed to cry. We're allowed. They don't want me to cry. Uh, but so thank you for staying with us. Thank you for being, just so loyal and coming on and sharing and everything. We are absolutely in a very political look at the stock market going down 1,000 points. People are going to get very unhappy and think, oh my gosh, there's so many criminals. And my answer to them is they are as dust to God. And so, strap on your boots, strap on your full armor of God. Understand that this government is for the people, by the people, of the people. Start doing the open records. Start being the citizen investigators. We saw that with the assassination attempt. Our agencies weren't doing the investigation. They cleaned it all up. We saw it before with other major cases. But this, we saw a lot of citizen investigators. They're still doing it. They're amazing. And just join, and they just don't have a chance then, you know. And with God for us, who can be against us? It's really, it's amazing to see this happening, and we're getting a lot of support. And I do want to say that there are a lot of support coming from the agencies now. There's a battle going on, and we have ongoing state active, active and ongoing state and federal investigations in all of this. Um, at so many levels with so many agencies, and and of course with of course we were in communication with Google. um, And we have this, they're answering us very quickly now, and so something is happening because the responses are coming. They are absolutely confirming there are ongoing investigations. We received the declaration of death that was so major and such a huge indication of the institutional support. But, there is a battle going on. And so we need to pray a lot, and we need to keep on with the open records and with the criminal reports, with the letters of concern to our representatives. So please don't stop now. Please don't stop now. They absolutely need to be driven. You can't get to the corral and not put the cattle inside the corral and then shut the gate. Shutting the gate is a very, very important part, right? So they have to. We're close to the corral, but they need to get in the corral. They need to do their job. We need to shut the gate. We need to say you have no other way except for justice. You have no place to go other than to do your duty, than to give the family Richard's remains, than to, establish righteousness. You have no other choice because we the people, the Bible is for the government of the people, by the people, and for the people, right? So uh, they cannot be given any other choice. We need to assert our power and our rights in a law abiding way. And if Theodora can do it, we can do it. Even her general, Belisarius, was like in awe when, and I'll end with this great story where they thought they were so overcome. The barbarians were charging the gate, and the general and his men were telling Justinian and Theodora, get in the ship. We've got to get out of here. Of course, it's Constantinople, modern day Istanbul. And, you got to get in the ship. You've got to get out of here. And she sat down. She said, no. Once I put on the purple, I stay in the purple. It's a very famous story from Belisarius when he was an old general. And the men looked at themselves and they were like, okay. They mounted their horses and they charged the gates, and the barbarians were taken by such surprise that they thought that there was some other backing or whatever, and they were destroyed, and Constantinople lived another day. And of course Theodora lived a long life. So it's just really an amazing story, and she's, just one of my heroes, um, to stand up against a mob of criminals that are up to no good. So, thank you so much. God bless you, and please share, and I will be back. I will be back tomorrow, God willing. Bye-bye.